Hi everybody, Crista Cowan here with another episode of The Barefoot Genealogist. As some of you may know, February is Black History Month, and so for a couple of episodes this month, we're going to be talking about how to do research in records that pertain particularly to African Americans. Today's episode is going to be really basic, just very beginner for those of you who are getting started and want to know how best to do research into these records, what records are available. And then in a couple of weeks, we'll do another episode that goes a little bit more in depth into some of the records that are available, some of the challenges that you might face as you do research for this particular ethnicity. So with that introduction, let's get started. Now, the first thing you're going to want to do here is just begin by documenting what you know. Now, this is no different than anybody else doing genealogy. This is the advice that we give everybody, which is just start with what you know. Start with yourself and work your way backwards in time, documenting information about your own birth, your parents' marriage, their birth, any death information along the way, and collect information as you go. Then I would recommend that you use the filters that are available on Ancestry.com. And I'll show you some of those here in just a minute, but let me just let you know specifically two things you should be looking for. The first thing on any search box is to pay attention to the collection priority. And then the second thing is where there is a race field available, go ahead and use that. Depending on the record you're searching, race was sometimes included in the information that was requested on the record and also the information that was indexed. So let's look at those specifically. First of all, that collection priority. You're going to find that on any search box. If you scroll down towards the bottom, just above the search button, you're going to see this collection priority. Now in there, we have all sorts of options for country-specific collections that you can narrow your search down to. Or you'll see here at the very bottom of that, we have 3 specific ethnicities, with African American being one of those. So you can select that, and what it will do is, as you search, it will surface the records that pertain to African Americans closer to the top of your search results if you're searching by ranked rather than specifically by category. Now just underneath that collection priority box, you have this little check box that says show only records from these collections. Now what that will do is it will limit your search results. So if you have that checked, it will only show you records that pertain to African Americans, which means that they have to have listed that on whatever the record is, and then it has to have been indexed as well. So you might want to play around with that a little bit and see how your search results differ when you click that or uncheck it. Now, on the main search box, there is also a race or a nationality field. Now, you can put in any number of things. If you put in something specific, like the word black, and you have it checked exactly, it will only return records that say that specifically. Now, if you leave it unchecked, what will happen is we'll do searches on a lot of variations of that. So as you all know, not everybody in a specific record would have listed that they were black. And throughout history, there were different politically correct terms for what we would call, and sometimes politically incorrect terms for what we would call black people on particular records. In some censuses they were listed as Negro, in some censuses they were listed as black, and then of course you have the varying degrees, and so you might have somebody listed as a mulatto or as a quadroon, and so you end up with all of these different kinds of terms that are used to identify the race of a particular individual. So if you put one of those terms here in this race field, that will give, like I said, priority to those who have that listed specifically. Any variations of that would come up next. But if you mark it exact, all you're going to get is those where it says that exactly on the record. So let me go ahead and just show you, let me reset my form here, show you an example of that. If you also, just kind of as a side note here, if you have African Americans selected as the collection priority, you don't have to always use the race field. So it will come up, you'll come up with some different results depending on how you do that, right? So I'm searching here for William Johnson. I've got African American selected as my collection priority, and I've listed black as the exact race that I'm searching for. Now, if I was viewing my search results here by relevance, what I'm going to see is, again, stuff that filters to the top of the list that's going to be more likely what I'm looking for, as opposed to searching by category, where I'm looking for something very specific in a search result. Okay, so that's how those two fields work together. Again, that's going to be race and collection priority. Now, back over here to our PowerPoint. Oh, let's try that again. Let me just give you one other piece of advice or information about the kinds of records that are available. I would encourage you strongly to explore what records are even available for African American research. Now, we know, of course, that if you're living in the United States, that you're going to be enumerated on the census from 1870, after the Civil War. That was the first federal census after the Civil War, from 1870 through 1930, which is the most recently available U.S. federal census. The 1940 census comes out in April. So the census is going to be the best place to start that exploration. Those records can be found very easily and quickly, either by doing a search like I just did, and you'll see here you have census results that come up, or you can hover over this search button here and click on census and voter lists and go directly to a search form that searches just censuses. Or, I love that there's so many options, right? You can go down to the card catalog, and if you know you're looking for somebody in a very specific census, you can say, I'm looking for my grandparents in the 1930 census. You can type that in, and it'll come up here at the top of the list. Then you can go directly to the 1930 census. Again, pay attention to the fact that there is a race field available to you, and then search for the person or people that you are searching for. Now, when you do that, let's just do a search here for this William Johnson in Alabama. I only want to see William Johnsons that are living in Alabama. William Johnson was born in about 1845, and he was born in Alabama. And again, clicking on this race field, and now I'm going to click search. What you're going to see here then are the search results for exactly what we looked here for. The only thing I marked exact was Alabama as a residence, and we start to see some of the potential search results here that we can then filter through. Now, when you hover over a view record, you get a little pop-up preview, so you can just double check that the race is listed here. Like I said, it will always surface those ones that fit your search results near the top of the list, but as things start to not match, you'll quickly see here we're at the third search result, and already this guy is listed as white, but everything else matched, which is why it showed us this particular search result. Okay, and then after that, then we start seeing things that don't match at all, right? But but like the last name's the same and the birth year's the same. So those search results are ranked based on what it is that you searched for. So generally, the more information you have, the more likely your person is going to surface near the top of the list. So census records are absolutely a great place to start with anybody doing genealogy, to just kind of build a framework for what's available. Now, there is another website that I'm going to recommend to you to explore what kinds of records are available for African American research. The easiest way to get to this website is ancestry.com/AA for African American History. That will take you to a landing page that looks like this. Oh, I just refreshed it. There we go. It looks like this. Okay, so you have here a search box that allows you to search entire databases or collections that are specific to African American history and heritage. You can also search the U.S. Census specifically, kind of functions the same way as those filters on race and collection priority. You can use that, but what I really want to point out here on this page is over here on the right-hand side, we have a list of featured African American historical record collections, and there are some amazing things in this collection. There are some interviews that were done with former slaves in the 1930s. It was part of I believe it was part of a WPA program. I actually helped index some of these records, and these are really amazing. So whether your specific ancestor is listed in them or not, really what it does for you is it helps you to understand the history and the time and the place a little bit better. If you want to understand any more about these collections, you can just click this Read More button. Pops out a link that explains a little bit more specifically about the records. You can view a sample of those records, or you can actually search them. There's also, we're going to have some sound problems here. It sounds like they're doing some work outside my office. There are U.S. colored troops. So there were specific regiments assigned to African Americans during the Civil War. Now, that doesn't mean that if your ancestor served in the Civil War, they had to have served in one of those troops. There are actually records of some blacks serving in white regiments, but for the most part, they were maintained within those colored troops. We have the Freedmen Bureau records, which are amazing, amazing records, banking records, information about refugees, freed slaves, lots of information in those records. Then we do have some slave manifests out of New Orleans, out of Savannah, some ads and abstracts, some slave owner petitions, and then really exciting, these records are excellent, these slave emancipation records. So as you start getting back, if you get back to that 1870 wall in African American research, there are some other records that you can start to explore to understand a little bit more about the movement of slaves in particular, and then look and see what other resources are available to you here to research further into your family history. So lots of records available. Like I said, today is just kind of an introduction to what kinds of records are available and how to get started. In a couple of weeks, we'll dive into some of those collections more specifically. Hopefully you will have watched this by then and have kind of a basic understanding, maybe started your tree. If you come across very specific roadblocks as you get going in this particular research, I would recommend that you just send an email to ask@ancestry.com, and maybe in the subject line put something about African American history so that I'll read that. There's several of us who read the emails in that box, but I'll watch for those. And as I start to put together the presentation that I'll do in a couple of weeks about some of the challenges, it would be helpful for me to know what some of the challenges are that you're coming up against so that I can give you some strategies for working around those. That's all I have for you today. Like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to email at ask@ancestry.com. If you have specific questions about African American research, please include that in the subject line. And in a couple of weeks, we'll chat some more about how to tackle some of those very specific problems with research into that particular ethnicity. This is Crista Cowan. Until next time, I hope you have fun climbing your family tree, no matter which direction you're going.